Welcome to the milestone 25th Miami Jewish Film Festival, the world's largest festival of its kind. We want to thank all of our members, sponsors, community partners, all of you film lovers, and especially our presenting sponsors, the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education, also known as SAGE, and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation for their continued support throughout all these years. I'm Rabbi Efrat Zarin Zohar, the Executive Director of SAGE, and I'm so excited to be moderating a virtual conversation with Guri Alfi and Moshe Samuels, the creators and stars of the Israeli series The New Jew, which is premiering at this year's festival. Thank you both for joining us. So let's get started.
Thank you for having us.
What motivated
Thank you, L'chaim.
L'chaim, L'chaim. So what motivated you to make this series and why did you do it together? So let's start with whoever wants to speak. Guri.
It's all about timing, I guess. Entertainment is all about timing. It was the right timing in my life and the right timing in Moshe's life. I was living here in LA, and only then I understood how I'm so far away from my Judaism, because I was brought up on this narrative, the Israeli narrative, which is kind of pushing away the Jewish narrative, or the, like being a secular Jew in Israel is not as being a secular Jewish people here in the US. And I saw it here, and I met with the American Jewry, and it was intriguing, and I was curious about all of it. And right at that time, I met with Moshe, who was an emissary for so long, for 23 times. He's like the Michael Jordan of emissaries. So he's in this point in his life where he always shown the Americans how the Israelis are, or how they live their life, and he wanted to approach the other side. He wanted to reverse what he did for the 23 times he did it. And he's Moshe can speak for himself. He's a practicing Jew. This is what he does.
Professional.
Do you want to add to it, Moshe?
A professional Jew.
Jew.
Practicing
Yes.
Jew. There's lots of practicing Jews.
I know. It's too early for me.
Drink your coffee. So yeah, I was a shaliach, an emissary of the Jewish Agency to the Upper West Side at the time, to a congregation called Bnei Jeshurun, a very big synagogue in the Upper West, between 2015 and 2019. And there were many low points in the relationships between Israel and North American Jewry. And I was thinking to myself, if we want to mend this gap, this growing gap between the two communities, it's a two-way street. It can't just be that we have to invest heavily in doing Israel education for American Jews, which has been what we've been doing for many years, and I've been doing for 20 years of my career. But actually, we've got to start talking in Israel about Jewish life in America. And I thought, how do we start this conversation with a critical mass of Israelis? And the best way to do that is through primetime television. So I came up with this idea, and like Guri said, the timing was right. He was going through his own personal journey at the time. And when I pitched it to him, it was an automatic yes. And the rest is history, which is really exciting.
That's super. And why did you pick Guri? Dafka Guri.
So for a number of reasons. First of all,
the only one. I was
the one and only.
Time. And I was the only one that answered your phones, I guess. I was fifth on the list.
Sure, that's what I told you.
And he's funny. I know. Okay, so one reason is he's funny. That I got.
Right. No, but that goes a long way. I mean, listen, how do we make this topic, which isn't very sexy? Let's be honest. Israelis have never shown much interest about learning about Jewish life in America, and that has to do, like what Guri said before earlier, it has to do with our Israeli narrative, right? We grew up with this notion of negation of the diaspora, that the only place where Jews could live an authentic Jewish life is in Israel and not in North America. North America is an anomaly, right? It's just waiting. We're waiting for either a second Holocaust or for all the Jews to assimilate. And the reality is that the only place where Judaism will survive is in Israel. That's like the core narrative of early Zionism. And the reality is very different, right? Is that Jewish life in America is thriving and succeeding, and it's just very different than what we know in Israel. Now, Israelis don't show any interest. They never really expressed any interest in seeing this. The last time there was a TV show about American Jews was 23 years ago. 26 years ago was the last time they made the TV
It's
show.
early for you too.
Early for me too. That's true. 26 years ago, and the reality is that nobody watched it because it aired the week of Yitzhak Rabin's assassination, so nobody really had any energy to watch that series.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, how do we make this topic accessible and interesting and appealing and relevant for primetime television, not for like a late night documentary on some small cable channel? And humor is a big part of it. And so having, being able to recruit someone like Guli made this a series that people wanted to watch, and made it a series that networks wanted to screen. And that made it, and really made it this topic accessible to Israelis. So the humor, but I think that's another big part about I think what Guli's quality is that he's a son of a storyteller, and he knows how to tell a good story. And I think that comes through very well in the series. And he's able to form a very personal relationship with all the people that he interviewed. And that's key, because we really wanted to present these personal narratives and make, the people to people element of the show is, I think, the key for its success. So Guli really is the perfect person.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And it definitely came through for sure. Has it made an impact yet, or will it be making an impact? What's the timeline for?
It already made an impact on lots of lives in Israel and here. A week ago, we were in Central Synagogue in New York. We were having this conversation on stage with Rabbi David Ingber and Rabbi Angela Buchtal. And we had like full sanctuary and people on via Zoom watching it. And in the show, she said that every time she comes to Israel, she both feels very at home, but very alienated. And she said after the show aired, she came to Israel again, and the taxi driver just picking her up at the airport said, "You're the Rabbanit from the show. It's you." And from that minute, everybody was taking selfies with her. And everybody was talking to her and like giving her this huge hug, and probably COVID, but they were so nice. And she was in this car with two other Rabbanim, and a guy on a motorcycle looked at her through the windshield and said, Rabbanit, Rabbanit. And as she was saying like the slander words that she used to hear when she was a kid, when she came to Israel, like they were saying Yapanit, Yapanit.
Yeah. Now they're saying Rabbanit. That's great.
Yeah. So this is the tikkun, and I think there's a lot of stories like that we encountered, and we got on social media and on the street, and the crowds are very diverse, much more diverse than we thought. All the big newspapers in Israel, all the columnists in Israel reacted to this show and reacted to each other, and the topic became something that was trending and was something that we didn't talk about for years, and now we did, and we felt like we did our share of bringing this issue into the mainstream.
Wow, kol hakavod. Honestly, this is holy work. Seriously, because the relationship, as you know, between the Jews and the diaspora, and particularly America and Israel, we all are so afraid of there being like a rupture that's irreparable. And this is something that is helping with all the other things that everyone is doing to keep us as Am Echad. And that's really one people. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. When we talked about people about are we still Am Echad, this is like a quick key question that we're asking. Everybody's saying yes, but we're different. Yes, but when we are really Am Echad, when something terrible happens, right? When something terrible happens for Jewish life anywhere on the globe, so we are all Am Echad, and all the Jews are like together, one people, and this is very emotional for everybody, and nobody cares if you're Reformed or conservative or Orthodox at that time or from where you are. So as long as anti-Semites exist, we're good, I guess.
Well, we
No,
should
but
pray.
but to be
Yeah.
serious though
Yeah.
about this aspect, I just want to say that I think it's
Right.
what we're trying to do in the series is we're trying to change that notion, to make sure that Israelis
Yeah.
feel as if they are part of one of of this larger Jewish collective. And even though we might be very, very different, and we're not trying to preach to the Israeli public to become American Jews, not when it comes to their politics, not when it comes to their religious practice. Right? I think there's a lot of authenticity to Judaism as it developed in Israel, and a lot of authenticity to Judaism developed in America, and they're not the same, and that's okay. But we really were trying to say, how do we gain a new appreciation and respect and dialogue with our significant other in the world, which is with American Jewry, without it having to be around the rise of anti-Semitism or terrorism in Israel.
That's right.
That's why sometimes when you communicate, how do we communicate in positive moments in our life?
Yes.
How do we gain inspiration from each other? So that was kind of like the idea behind the show. And I think we could gain a lot of inspiration, us Israelis, from Jewish life in America, from the proactiveness, creativity, the fact that you actively make those Jewish choices in your life. That's something that we as Israelis could learn a lot from American Jews.
You know how we say we'll meet in Rak B'Smachot, right?
Only on let's only meet on simchas, on happy occasions. Yeah.
Yes. So we want to meet on happy occasions. We want to meet more on happy occasions. Not talking politics, not talking, about anti-Semitics and everything. It's just, just telling your narrative, telling your story.
Love
engaging.
it. It's a little bit more Ahad Ha'am focused as opposed to all the political thinkers and the anti-Semitic, that we need a place for people to be fleeing to. When you think about it, that you're right, that kind of narrative in Israeli life is sort of eclipsed by some of the other burning issues. So this is great that you're doing this. I also wanted to ask you what both of you, your biggest surprise during the filming was. I mean, some of it we saw Guri play out for you on the screen in a certain sense, but I mean, was there if you can point to like a moment of surprise, like we didn't expect this, or I didn't expect that feeling, or I didn't expect that outcome somehow. So who wants to go first? Moshe, you were not.
Guli, I mean, you have a great story to tell about this. So why?
Which one?
No, I think your epiphany moment was in the Rockies when we had the bar mitzvah. I think that's like that really impacted the whole language that we're using in the series.
Yes, it kind of
that was episode 4.
That was episode 3.
No, that was episode 3.
Okay. Right. The Aliyah was episode 4. Right. Mm-hmm.
When we thought about the show, and we were like in the study room just thinking about it, and Moshe was pitching all sorts of items we can, places we can go to, people we can interview. So I was judging it by a comedian standards. Is it funny enough? Will it carry the weight, and will it create a dialogue, like a good ping pong between us? And we debated over every item. And this item that he brought to the table, he just said the headlines. He said, so there's the adventure rabbi, and I said, yes, sold. I'm there. Let's do it. Because I thought, this will be very funny. A rabbi that's taking bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah girls and boys up to the hills and does the bar mitzvah over there, and I'll do a second bar mitzvah, and it will be great. And the fact is that I was so surprised how it moved me. That moment when we were on the Rocky Mountains, I'm surrounded by strangers, but we are singing Hina Ma Tovu Manayim, and we're like engaging in this conversation with our ancestors at that moment, at that pure natural moment in nature. And it was like this moment of epiphany that I understood what's the whole thing about, and what's the show about. And I wasn't out, just looking for the punchlines anymore. I was looking for the story. I was looking to understand more, and I was looking to become something from it. And this is the greatest thing about creation, that after you do it, it has a life of its own, and it wants something from you. So I was gladly giving it away. Like, okay, the hell with comedy, the hell with my pride, the hell with my fixations. I'm going with this, and I'm going with this journey, and it changed me a lot.
Wow. And do you feel like you, just as a follow-up question before we get to Moshe,
sure,
did you take it back to Israel, that feeling, and how did it play out? How did it play out in your life there? And if it did, I mean, or is it, is it sort of?
It did. That feeling that in Israel you have two sides, either you're dati or you're not dati. Mm-hmm. So that feeling is gone.
Religious or not religious, right? It's a binary experience, right? Like it's one or the other. So for you, it's no longer binary. Wow.
No, it's no longer a thing. It's something that I'm claiming back. And this is what I'm asking and I'm offering my friends to claim back this narrative that is so important to their life, and all the values and all the stories and all the storytelling that has been a part of our core for so many years. And you just gave it away without even asking why, because you enjoy the comfortable Jewish Israeli narrative, which is, I'm an Israeli and that's it. I don't have to really practice it. And so here I really got this, that everybody is looking at this Judaism as this grand buffet, of things that you can pick and choose from, and what is more fitted to you and to your family and to your values. And it's okay. And it's neither black or white. It's a lot of shades of gray, and it's great.
Oh, thank you for that. Just that you made me tear up just listening to you say we gave it away so easily. Like I just it just hit me like I'm like verklempt, as they say in Yiddish. like it's so true. So many Israelis that I know that live there, it because of the matzav, because of whatever the situation is in Israel in terms of
survival
religion,
mode, yes.
but religion and how it's involved in politics and all kinds of things, family dynamics, everything. It's like the answer for so many people is just back off. I don't want no part of this, even though this is all of our Yerusha, it's all of our heritage, whether we're
that's right.
Wherever we are on the spectrum, and we can. And it's so beautiful that sort of in a way the American model of choice, which is what it is here in the diaspora, is what could bring Israelis back to reclaiming through choice those aspects that can call to their soul again and increase a sense of spiritual connection to their birthright, which is Yahadut if they're Jews, right? Judaism. So thank you for saying that, because it just struck me in a very profound way. And Moshe, what about you? How did this manifest for you?
So I don't come from the TV world. I come from the Jewish education world, and I was in charge of the research. So I kind of knew what we're walking into but so content wise, I can't say that was a big surprise for me. But first of all, I've never done TV before, and the entire experience was just an amazing learning experience on so many different levels, and just being involved in the different stages of the production has been an eye-opening experience. I think I'll stay a Jewish educator and not switch to TV anytime soon. But beyond that, I think for me the biggest surprise was just the way it was received by the Israeli public. Even though my dream was to be able to bring the narrative of American Jewish life into every living room in Israel, I was still skeptic about our ability to do this, again because we have such a pushback from anything that's like Jewish, and definitely diaspora Jewish. It's like it's not part of who we are. It's something that we could relate to. In many ways, our narrative opposes your narrative as American Jews. So I was sure that I said, okay, we'll create something, and it will it will have a niche crowd. People will will either love it or hate it. But it is what it is. And the reality is that it made a much bigger splash than I ever thought it would, both when it comes to the amount of people who saw it, the diversity of people who saw it, the conversations that Goga said before that it stirred, and the fact that it has a shelf life. It's not like people watched it and then walked away, but like the conversation's continuing. We're now using the series as a text in the Israeli education system, in
That's amazing.
pre-army programs, training staffs of Israel programs in Israel, Birthright and Masa and whatnot.
Wow.
And so we're hoping to curricularize this and make this something that like generates more and more conversations. And that to me is something that I never expected would happen to this extent.
Wow.
Yeah,
Cool.
again, Moshe, it's the matter of timing. That was really
Mhm.
the right timing for everybody in Israel to be a recipient of that. I mean, they didn't even know that they want to hear about this subject. They didn't know, but it was there, and I think it was very genuine. I think when we switched with when we change our mindset from like this, doing this very fast documentary, funny, and we got into the storytelling and and interviewed people with amazing stories, and we kind of paced it down a bit. It got pretty real for people. So I think that the real can appreciate real.
Yeah. And I also think they were on the journey. I'll take it back. I think, Guri, one of the things that made this work is because you brought a genuine curiosity. And even though you do show your sarcasm and other kinds of things, right? But you never were condescending. You were never nasty. Like, you were never trying to make fun of people for the sake of making fun of them, right? It was like there were jokes and things, but it wasn't mean-spirited. And I think, first of all, that curiosity, that openness, that's the key to education all through your life, all through anyone's life. If you can be open and non-judgmental, the world will teach you so much. Everyone will share with you because it's such a unique thing to be open and non-judgmental. Very few people can do that genuinely. And you really did that genuinely. And so number one, that was the tone. And then secondly, we watched your journey in the same way that you were, bringing this whole journey to everybody in Israel. You were going through the journey, and I think people were going through it with you. And because you allowed yourself to do that, that's what made this resonate so much back home. So I just have to say, kol hakavod, to both of you, all of you, for structuring it in a way that worked so beautifully, but also for being who you are, that you didn't make fun of American Jews movie, right? Which you could have easily done. There's a lot to make fun of, just like we could do the same thing with Israelis, and of course we do as comedians. I've seen that. But this was both a lighthearted and with fun, but you really nailed it. I think it was fantastic in that way. And in addition to this great educational work that's now going on around this, how else can we overcome these differences, do you think? Are there other ways that we can overcome the differences between Israeli and American Jews and really strengthen the things we share?
Don't tell anyone how. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
Don't tell anyone how to live their lives. Just share your story. Your story. Tell your story. I think we are in a time where people appreciate a good story. We get it through podcasts, through this kind of Zoom interviews, or all kind of platforms that are there to tell a story. So just share it. Don't tell us how to live our lives. Don't be judgment. Don't pass judgment about how it should or shouldn't be done. Just tell your narrative, tell your story, and that sharing, I think, will bring us closer together.
Thank you. Great. And Moshe, what do you think?
No, again, I think that people to people element is really key. Unfortunately, I think what's controlling the conversation right now is, both the political divide in Israel around the conflict, and when it comes to the political divide here in North America, and issues of religion and state. And these are all very important topics to talk about. I'm not dismissing them in any way. And I think it's legitimate for everyone to have an opinion about them. But we lost along the way, we lost that ability to empathize and to just hear each other's personal stories. And the whole conversation is just focused on talking points and arguing about facts and numbers and history. And that's not how you build a relationship. That's actually how you, in many ways, dismantle a relationship. And we need to take a few steps back to the earlier stage of this relationship and say, okay, how do we build trust? How do we build a sense of camaraderie, of closeness? And that could only happen through this people-to-people element. And only afterwards we could have those conversations, which need to be had. Like we need to have those conversations, but then we could have them with respect, and we could have them when we understand where people are actually coming from and what motivates them, and that we actually share the same concerns and the same interests. We just have different ways to interpret our reality and where we should be going from here. But we kind of like we stopped having those intimate conversations, and we're just arguing, on social media, and we try to break that with this atmosphere of the show and the topics that we brought to the show. And that's actually one of the reasons why we filmed 3 days of politics. We originally thought that we really have an entire episode that talks about the political divide and the role that Americans play in local politics. And we filmed 3 days in Washington, D.C. We went to AIPAC, and we filmed Jeremy Ben-Ami from J Street, and we interviewed pro-Israel students and critical students from If Not Now, and all kind of things. None of that made it into the series because, what Guri said earlier, in that bar mitzvah moment, we realized that it's all about those personal stories. It's not about the talking points and the facts. And it wasn't worth, I'm sorry to say that, but in many ways, it wasn't worth our time, our limited airtime to focus on that, because that just kidnaps the conversation or hijacks it.
Yes,
makes it to a much negative place. Our role is to build trust.
We went from journalism into storytelling that moment. We switched that kind of approach, and you realize that both of us, we didn't say anything about leadership. So we're not saying, you're saying how it can be corrected, and we automatically should say, the leaders should be talking. No, both of us are saying it's a bottom-up approach. It has to be from within the need, from within each other's needs to become this Am Echad. It has to be our common interest. It has to be from the bottom to up. And I'm not trusting, politics and politicians and leadership to succeed with that. I think I trust people.
Beautiful. And I just think that there's so much that we can give each other through the telling of our stories. There's so much richness that American Jews have, and so much richness that Israeli Jews have. There's so much to be gained from that conversation. So I'm so thankful that the two of you and your team have done what you've done. I just loved it. I just thought it was, and I'm so excited to hear that it's making the mark it is in Israel and really starting something remarkable. Every now and then you embark on something that seems, like this, and then it mushrooms and expands and it becomes something amazing. And Kol HaKavod, it sounds like that is exactly what's happened. So I just want to thank you both, Guri Alfi and Moshe Samuels, the creators and star of the Israeli TV series, The New Jew, for joining us this afternoon. And once again, thank you to all of our members, sponsors, community partners, volunteers, and all of you film lovers, as well as the Center for the Advancement of Jewish Education, also known as SAGE, and the Greater Miami Jewish Federation for participating in this milestone 25th Miami Jewish Film Festival. Again, guys, Kol HaKavod, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you
for having us.
Ken Yerbu.
Thank you for having us. And shout out for my friends in Miami. Shout out to them.
Yay.